My chronic condition impacts my daily functioning. Things such as physical activity, exercise, going to work or socialising.
Like there was one chap there with asthma, for instance, or another one with hypertension, and how they moved forward like that, it was quite fascinating.
Even when treated, my chronic condition will flare, fluctuate and increase in severity.
I think for me, seeing that, I think it's overwhelming.
I was more surprised at the start of the questions that they weren't also moving through, because obviously I'm not too familiar with living with HIV, so I was surprised that they weren't taking steps earlier on.
Even when treated, my chronic condition may be the cause of my death.
It was nice when we were all like moving together, but yeah, when it got to that point where the questions were more like focused on I guess like that stigma and that discrimination, and it was just like feeling that movement of like Reese and Diane like kind of moving past everyone. It was just like a full body reaction of just like this is what it is.
It was a bit nerve-wracking at first, and it was interesting seeing everyone sort of walk in front of me quite a bit first. I kind of thought, oh, I don't know if I'm actually going to catch up with them, and then sort of ended up at the end.
It felt very comforting to have everyone moving, and when we stopped moving, it felt disjointed and disconnected.
People still believe outdated and wrong information about my chronic condition. People are fearful to be in a relationship with me because of my chronic condition.
When I was still watching the people with HIV move forward and forward and forward, it was really interesting thinking about the questions as they came up.
Yeah, it was sort of bringing up some things, and then before I could really process it, we're on to the next thing, and then on to the next thing, and then by the time I got to the end, I was quite, whoa, a little bit overwhelming.
I am monitored by the government because of my chronic condition.
Things you hear on the street, like things you hear from your co-workers, they can just really stick on you, even passing comments. Like that's where like the residue of stigma just gets all chunky.
It wasn't until the second half of the questions I really realised how much stigma and discrimination still exists and how heartbreaking that is to witness.
Yeah, healthcare can be looked at in a way where it's like used to discriminate against a vulnerable population. It just baffles me, and I feel really like angry.
The discrepancy between any chronic condition and then HIV was quite apparent by doing that exercise.
It breaks my heart a little bit, you know, it hurts to know that they're moving forward because of that stigma.
The reality of seeing the two people living with HIV, like I said at the end of those questions, and how they were moving forward, and the impact of those questions on day-to-day life and what that would be like to live with, it was really, really upsetting.
You know, I think some of the physical health impacts of HIV are a little bit more hidden, if you know what I mean, and I mean, obviously I'm aware of them, and we look out for them and treat them, and it's more preventative medicine.
I feel that I'm quite privileged. I have a really good medical team, and I also have a workplace that's very supportive, and not everybody has that, and I'm also very open and out about my status.
Over 40 years now, HIV has been synonymous with contagion and death, and 40 years, that's longer than what I've been alive for. That's a whole generation.
On a daily basis, my patients can give me scenarios and interactions they've had with unknown colleagues of mine that are just embarrassing and unacceptable.
So I've had quite a few experiences where doctors sort of look at me and they're bewildered and they've got no idea what to say to me, or they give me advice that I know is wrong.
I was diagnosed with breast cancer just over 2 years ago, and going through radiation and chemo. The second day I went in for radiation, on the screen it had, is HIV positive, wear gloves. And it's not necessary, there's no body fluids involved in doing radiation. They said, we didn't really think about it and see it from your point of view. And they changed it immediately, which I was very impressed about.
And so yeah, just like having that moment of being like, oh crap, like this is still affecting you to the point where you're refusing like intimacy and connection for yourself.
I worked in Royal Perth Hospital in 1990, and you actually had to volunteer to participate in the care of the HIV positive patients that were held up in the oncology wards because they had negative pressure rooms. And I can remember having dealing with a young man who had disseminated candida, so thrush. He was dying of disseminated thrush, and I was all gowned up, and I was holding his hand, and I thought, this. I took my glove off and held his hand, and that was really the point where I thought, this is where I'd like to work in this field.
But even as a whole, I think bringing HIV and AIDS back into mainstream medicine is also important for people to understand that it's still something that people struggle with.
I certainly think we need to start changing the rhetoric around what living with HIV looks like in 2023 and in the future, for sure.
So educate yourself and also be courteous, have empathy, and allow yourself to be able to speak to someone if they allow you into their world.
If you're just coming from a place of standing over here and judging someone, pause and reflect on that.
I want to fight through that stigma. I just don't want it to even be there. So
yeah, just the things that you put out there just can land on people and stick with them for a long time.
I have been vilified due to my chronic condition.
I've been working in community for about a year now, so I've met a lot of people from a lot of different cohorts, and there still seems to be so many misconceptions about HIV, how it's transmitted, people not really knowing about U equals U. I think there's still a lot of room there where people can learn, and it's surprising that there's still so much knowledge to be learned 40 years later.
I think people are forgetting about HIV, and I think there's a lot of people out there who aren't educated on where things have changed so much over the years, of how we've got PEP and PrEP, U equals U. There's a lot of information out there that I think even educated people and people in the medical profession aren't aware about, and certainly the general public.
A person with HIV who is taking their treatment every day will get to a point where the virus has become to such a low point within their system that it's undetectable. And when we see a HIV person who is undetectable, that means they can no longer transmit the virus. Hence, U equals U, undetectable equals untransmittable.
I also think that you can't do this in isolation, that we have to move our entire society towards accepting people for who they are, not just HIV.
I think believe people and look after people. If someone says that they need something, that they need help in any way, they need an adjustment, then give it to them.
Be nice to people, I guess, in the end. That's what it comes down to. If you're not someone that experienced that firsthand, then there's really no way that you can understand what someone's going through.
So I think it's just really education, I guess. That's all, what else can we do? And I think just to remind people that we could easily be your brother, sister, mother, father.
Just listen, and that's the first step. The next step is action.
You've got to be open to helping people and understanding their journey, and not being so quick to judge someone just because they're living with something that you're not familiar about or you've heard is a bad thing.
People living with HIV are still feeling so stigmatised, not only by medical professionals but the peers that they're surrounded by, and no one should have to feel that way.
Almost half of all Australians live with a chronic health condition. Why is there one we still can't accept? We created the narrative of HIV. We can change the narrative of HIV.